my name is Timothy Harris, and today I'm here with Dr. Vivek Rudrapatna at UCSF. Dr. Rudrapatna is a gastroenterologist that specializes in inflammatory bowel disease. So Dr. Rudrapatna, I've already introduced you a little bit, but I'd like to ask you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a gastroenterologist at UCSF. I've been here on the faculty since 2020. And I also spend part of my time working as a clinical data scientist, trying to learn more from the electronic health records to improve how we diagnose and treat patients with IBD.
So Dr. Rudrapatna, what's your hot take?
Go on, what do you mean?
What do you have a strong opinion about that could be controversial?
What do I have a strong opinion about that could be controversial? Are you asking related to GI and IBD and data science, or just
anything
in
in life?
Anything in life. I feel like we got a ways to go to improve the quality of research that we do in the general field of data science. I think that unfortunately there's a lot of hype, a lot of enthusiasm, which makes sense, but perhaps too far in a way. And I think that we need to work to overall improve our standards, improve the quality of the work that we do, and be more patient. I think if we jump the gun, if we publish things a bit prematurely, if there's too much pressure to get to the finish line first rather than getting there the right way, then it can lead to some unfortunate consequences. So overall, I would say that the field needs to slow down. We need to improve how we do what we do.
So within the next 5 to 10 years, what's your goal for the gastroenterology field?
Within the next 5 to 10 years, I think, a lot of us, we're kind of in an intermediate space, I'd say. We help make decisions about patients using a combination of what we read about in the literature and our own experience, our own intuition. But I think we're living in a world where there's a growing role and value for artificial intelligence and kind of computer-assisted technologies of various sorts to improve how we make decisions. And it would be awesome if in the next 5 to 10 years in GI and in, quite frankly, all of medicine, if we can find ways to appropriately bring these methods to the clinic. So we have to do that carefully because AI can get things wrong all the time, and it can get things wrong in a very insidious way, in a way that patients and clinicians might not be aware of the mistakes that they make. And there may be too much trust, if you will, in these methods. But if we do it in a proper and careful way, I think there's a tremendous potential benefit, the ability to realize precision medicine, which is what a lot of us have been very excited about for a long time. We're right now at the cusp where we probably can realize this vision, but it'll take time and effort and caution to get there. So that is what I would say is my vision for the next 5-10 years. If we can get there, it'll be amazing.
What made you develop that type of mindset of slow, precise, let's do things right, and let's 100% get that way?
Yeah, I think to some extent I've been that way for a while. I think various experiences that I've had over the years, in primary and secondary school and college and med school and beyond, maybe a lot of it I would say actually came from my time as a former PhD student, where you're trying things out in the lab, you get a result, it's exciting, you share with other people, and then other people find lots of little holes here and there, and you realize what you thought you discovered was not really a discovery at all. There was some missing control, there was some mistaken assumption, and you go back to the drawing board and you try again. I would say that my time as a researcher really has forced me to really slow down, to be much more cautious and thoughtful, to really battle test my ideas. And even based on where I am right now, I subject my work and the work of my colleagues, if you will, to what I consider to be a reasonably high standard, but just the same when I submit it to peer review by anonymous colleagues I find that even then there are still more limitations to recognize and to try to overcome. So I would say the process of being a researcher, of being an investigator, of trying to discover new knowledge has been very humbling. And I think that more than anything else has kind of forced me to slow down and to try to get things right as much as possible the first time, rather than to jump to conclusions and mislead people or come to disappointments personally or elsewhere. It's a kind of thing where I would say the combination of being like a physician, where I'm trying to appropriately convey subtleties and nuance and prognostication to patients in the setting of uncertainty, right? But also being a researcher, we're trying to discover new knowledge. These things together have really sharpened my sensibilities around this area, I would say.
So what's the most challenging part of your job on a daily basis?
Many aspects. I would say it's balancing lots of different things. Having this kind of double life, if you will, as a physician and as a data scientist, it requires that at all times you're always balancing many competing concerns. There are sick patients who need your help, and you have to make very quick decisions to try to get them on the right path, to kind of steer away from deterioration and towards improving health, right? And you have to kind of take calculated guesses in the setting of limited information and try to help. And then, of course, you're in a research world where you're kind of leading a team, maybe many teams. You are kind of shepherding projects through from the very earliest stages, where you're taking good guesses as to how much resources it'll take, how many people, how much time, how much effort, getting data that you need, and identifying the team, developing them, mentoring them, inspiring people, and then learning a lot on your own. You kind of reach the end of the road in terms of your training and education, and all of a sudden you end up in my shoes, and now you're kind of, in a way, you're at the forefront, and there is no guidebook, there is no formal didactics or education. There's just the open universe of PubMed and the internet and other places. And so you're always self-educating, you're always teaching yourself new methods, you're always trying to figure out what's the best use of my time. And you're paving the path forward as you go. So all of these things together in a bundle, this I would say is the most challenging part of my job. Yeah.
So who do you go to whenever you need advice?
I have a few mentors here and there in the university and outside. My primary mentor at UCSF is Atul Butte, and he's very dynamic, very inspirational. He is also a physician and a data scientist, but he wears many other hats beyond that. And so I get guidance from him all the time. I actually look to my parents, for various kinds of life-related guidance as it pertains to work and beyond work. I increasingly am trying to cultivate a research team or a research group where it's really bidirectional, meaning to say it's not just me providing supervision or guidance to them, but ideally I want to empower people in the group to feel comfortable to share their thoughts or to even disagree with me, because I think that when we have a healthy dialogue back and forth, that creates the very best of what we can do together as a team. And so I have many different mentors from across the university and outside, but I think from all these different sources, it definitely helps me try to make the best decisions.
What is data science for those out there who don't know what it is, and why is it important?
Yeah. Data science is, you might say, a new term. Probably people have been using it for the past 10, 20 years, but I would say it's gotten a lot of traction probably within the last 5 or 10. And really, it's kind of an amalgamation or, it's kind of the confluence, you might say, of many different fields that have existed independently for a long time, but now they're all converging. So the fields of like computer science, the fields of statistics, the fields of, at least in this application of data science, of epidemiology and clinical research, of machine learning and artificial intelligence, natural language processing. So many different kinds of aspects to it. Knowledge representation, reasoning, and scientific computing. It's where all these things come together. And basically it's the result of a realization that we live in a world of big data. Every institution, government, private, academic, they've all been collecting data in these huge data, these huge server farms and such over the last many decades. And we have this data, but what can we do with it? Can we learn from it? Can we learn from our past mistakes and continually improve? Mm-hmm. And this is a theme that applies across the board, right? If you're Uber across the street, no doubt they are very actively mining their data to improve the services that they deliver. If you're the government, in virtually every aspect of how they function, they're doing this. And just the same in healthcare, we're doing the same. We have electronic health records, all the information that physicians type up in the context of clinical encounters. How do we leverage all of that information? How do we learn which treatments work and which ones don't? How do we decide for the patient who's in front of me right now, mm-hmm. which is the right choice for them? How do we personalize therapy for them? Can we avert diagnostic delays? Maybe patients who have been suffering for many years with an undiagnosed condition or a rare disorder. Can we marry clinical intuition of an individual person with the cumulative experience of a health system over decades and over millions of patients, and marry those two things together to then produce an output that's far more powerful than any could do on its own? This is the vision of what data science is all about.
What will your dreams take you next?
That's a great question. I'm not sure yet. I've been at UCSF for the past few years as junior faculty, and I'm doing my best, like lots of folks here, to try to convince others, like the government, the NIH in particular, and many other funding agencies to invest in this world. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there are many other excellent, undoubtedly outstanding folks in this competitive space, and dollars are always limited. But I hope to convince them that this work is worth investing in, and if so, then that will give me more time and more opportunities to develop new methods, and hopefully to bring some of these ideas or insights from the sandbox to the clinic. That's the vision. That's what we all want to do in this field. And so I hope that the next few years will bring about more opportunities for me to work in this area and to make some advances.
A quote by a wise man, it says, "You are 1 in 5 of every person you hang around." How applicable has that been in your life and your success as a doctor?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think we do our best to surround ourselves with others who inspire us, and we try as much as possible to allow that inspiration to rub off. And I think that's true. And certainly in my own growth as a relatively new physician, relatively new gastroenterologist and IBD specialist, that's definitely been the case at UCSF with the various mentors I've had. And prior to that, at Baylor, at Mount Sinai, at Harvard, various people that I interact with over the years, they've definitely rubbed off on me in varying ways. So I would definitely agree with that.
So what's the greatest lesson that you've learned from the past that you don't do anymore?
You're talking about like a bad habit that I've given up, or you're talking about a new thing that I now bake into my daily practice to try to be better?
It's open to more than one interpretation.
Oh, okay. One of the things that I've struggled with over the years is this kind of fine balance between trying to be good at a lot of things and trying to be good at just a few things. Mm-hmm. This kind of jack of all, master of none kind of idea or philosophy versus, or to say differently, being well-rounded, mm-hmm. versus what people now have been calling like being well lopsided, like having certain strengths that you really can call your own and can rely on. Mm-hmm. When I was very young, I kind of strongly veered towards being a jack of all, mm-hmm. and it was great. But I was advised by many, I would say most strongly my own dad, that it would do me well to try to pick a few things and just maybe one or maybe a few, try to just get really good at it. Because that's, because in the real world, in the end, many of us are going to have, although our jobs are always multifaceted, there's always going to be at least one thing that people are really counting on you to deliver on. And that has got to be like unquestionably excellent. And so that's something that I would say it took some time to really stick, but going into college and medical school and grad school, like literally over 10 years, I would say, it's kind of washed over me, and it's something that I now would say that I strongly kind of bake into to how I operate. But interestingly enough, having spent that time and that effort, baking that or making that a part of my personality, a part of who I am, I now, in a way, feel comfortable to the point that I allow myself the opportunity to revert increasingly to that former mentality, the mentality of being a bit of a jack of all. So in my current world, I would say primarily as a data scientist, I realize that the skills and the tools that we need are truly vast. There are just so many different methods. Like the literature is like blowing up exponentially. It's like very, very difficult to kind of, you're in this like vast landscape and you have to like pick a direction and then you have to go in that direction. Like both those things, like knowing where to go and then actually going in a kind of concerted way in that towards some goal. Those things are independently very difficult, but to pick a direction that requires that you have enough intuitions about what are the different ways I could go. Not just like left or right, but like the infinite gradations of leftness and rightness, right? And so of late, like I would say within the last 2-3 years in this new research-oriented role, I have allowed myself the opportunities to explore things that otherwise might seem totally unrelated, totally afield from the core as to what you would think someone in my shoes should do, because I have this intuition that these various disparate fields are connected in interesting, subtle, but maybe profound ways. And if I take a little bit of time to learn about these other disciplines and connect the dots, that there are going to be rewards down the line. So I allow myself a little bit of that opportunity. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope it answers your question.
It did. So it seems like a common concept throughout, like everything you say is delayed gratification. Who do you think instilled that in you, and how do you apply that like significantly to your life? Because it takes a lot of discipline.
It's interesting. It's like, to what extent do various like personality traits or instincts, to what extent are they really quote unquote innate, whatever that means, or to what extent do they come from mentorship or child rearing, if you will, from parents and other early life mentors, right? It's hard to say. But comparing me to, my sibling, my sister, or to other people who I would say grew up in a similar way, you do get a sense that there is like a role for both, for nature as well as for nurture. And undoubtedly, a lot of my tendencies towards delayed gratification are nature driven. And so again, nothing that I had any control over and seems to have just come just because that's me being me. But in a way, I think our modern world, for better or for worse, really does seem to value or prioritize people who can delay gratification. So it's worked out for better or for worse. I think, how does one live, right, in a way where everything is delayed? I think one mental strategy that I've used that I've found helpful is trying to get satisfaction out of the short-term wins, out of the intermediate wins. The long-term wins always are long-term. They take a long time. You may never get there, right? It's kind of like the journey, not the destination. But if you can learn to enjoy the journey, the small little hills that you conquer, on the way to Mount Impossible, right? Then these are the ways that you can keep yourself like satisfied and motivated, and inspired to keep going.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Yeah, I was telling you before about like allowing myself the kind of liberty or the pleasure to kind of spend time doing other things that are pretty far afield. And part of it is a little bit of a fairy tale or a fantasy I tell myself, which is to say that like I allow myself to explore certain kinds of things, read up on certain kinds of things, watch certain kinds of things, that I kind of tell myself that, oh, I'm sure it's gonna help me down the road. It's a faith. I don't know that for sure, and it's nice to be able to think that, because truthfully, I pursue those things because I enjoy them, and so they're all guilty pleasures. But I have found that in the past, some of these guilty pleasures have, after all, not been so guilty, that they actually have been very helpful. And so, in a way, trusting myself, developing more and more trust in myself has been good, has been gratifying, and so I'm still doing it.
So besides curiosity, when somebody's looking to be a part of your team or within your circle, what are some of the traits that need to be there?
So we look for people who basically have some like demonstrated expertise or background in a given area of study, and it could be anything. It could be clinical medicine, it could be epidemiology, it could be data science of various aspects, it could be anything. So ideally having some like fund of knowledge they can draw from is like one part of it. But the other part of it, which is equally important, maybe more important, truthfully, is someone who's got like a burning desire to learn, and to self-educate, because that is so important in the modern world. Like, we have education systems and they're awesome and they bring us to a certain point, but at the end of the escalator, you're just dropped off someplace, but you got to keep going. And so where is that going to come from? It's got to come from you. You have to have the intuitions to some extent. You got to have the drive to seek out help when you need it. But 90% of it, 95% of it maybe comes from you and you alone. And so someone who's got that burning passion or desire, that is just as important, if not more important, than showing up to the front door with expertise already under your belt.
I see.
Yeah.
So why gastroenterology? Why not neurology? Why not cardiology? Why specifically gastroenterology? And why the healthcare field in particular?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm a second generation Indian American. My parents both were born and brought up in India, and they came to the US in the 70s and 80s. And I think many people have noticed that a lot of people of Indian descent do tend to end up, at least in the US, in the medical field. And I would say it's not by accident. There are some kind of cultural drivers there. There's a lot of the kind of value system, and there's a lot of like respect, if you will, within the Indian communities, et cetera, towards encouraging the youth to pursue careers in that field, and many do. But of course, as lots of immigrant groups do, they evolve over time, and people increasingly feel empowered to explore like the broad universe of career opportunities, and not just one. But being the first member of my family, if you will, to be born in the U.S. and having certain kind of cultural influences, familial influences in that direction, I was kind of motivated, directed, or inspired to pursue a career in medicine, and so I did. Even though I would say that my natural inclinations were always a little bit more in the direction of kind of the physical sciences and quantitative disciplines like math and such, computer science. And so I found a way over time, over many, many years, to blend those two things, to marry the world of being a physician with someone who's really interacting quite a lot with data science, if you will. So that's been the way I've developed that blend over time, which has been awesome. Why gastroenterology? So as a kind of quirk of fate, if you will, in my very first year of medical school, I came down with a disorder known as ulcerative colitis, which is a type of inflammatory bowel disease. And I still have it, but thankfully I've been in relatively good health for many years now. I'm very grateful for that. But as I was going through medical school and then beyond, I was thinking about different career options within medicine. And I thought, what better a choice than to select the field for which I have the most direct experience as a patient. And so I chose to do internal medicine, and I chose to do gastroenterology, and I chose to learn a bit more about IBD. And now I see patients, and it's quite uncanny to sit across the room from someone who's just like you, or maybe a version, a reflection, or an echo of you from 10, 20 years ago. And they're suffering in many cases. And having a very natural empathy and desire to help them get better, leveraging everything that you know as a patient, as a physician, and someone who's trying to push the state of the art with data science. It's hard to find, a better way to lead a career than that, I would say. So I'm very happy with it.
So what advice do you have for a STEM student out there who's lacking direction, but they want to pursue an MD, PhD? What should they be ready for?
It's a long road, I'll say that. At the same time, I don't want to discourage or dissuade folks. The time flies, and there's a lot of fun to be had along the way. So it's not something that should be kind of feared, but it's something that ideally should be embraced. If you really love STEM, if you really love science, technology, engineering, mathematics, I think it's an amazing opportunity. I don't have any regrets, honestly. I'm very happy to have the career that I've had thus far. I hope that it'll last as long as it'll last, and if it doesn't, then I'll pivot and do something else. But I see, before me many opportunities, many possible directions, and a lot of them are exciting, whether this current track that I'm on or many others. I think a lot of people are inspired by a career in medicine because they really want to make a difference and help people. And they think about that. And I think that has always been and will continue to be a strong driver, a strong motivation or inspiration for people to choose careers in medicine. However, what I also would really say to people in STEM, majors in college and beyond, thinking about a career in medicine, is at some point you're going to get to the end of the road, right? And you're going to be at the forefront, and then you're going to be kind of in the business of delivering healthcare. And that's, of course, very important. But ideally, there should be some desire or interest to make healthcare better. Healthcare is not static, it is dynamic, but there need to be people who are willing to push the state of the art forward. And that is where all of your STEM skills can come to bear. Taking a fresh look at where we are and what is it going to take to make things better, because there are plenty of opportunities to make things better, and how can you innovate in that area? That I think is super important. So not to ever lose sight of that, but to keep it in the back of your mind, and then at the end of the road to bring it back and to keep moving with it. That I think is super important. So you're going to be in college, you're going to be learning lots of biology, you're going to take the MCATs, you're going to go to medical school, you're going to be in the grind for a while. You're going to memorize lots and lots of stuff. It's going to be crazy. And you might get at times discouraged, and it's normal, it's part of it. But you will persevere, you will overcome those challenges. You'll make it out the other end, and never lose sight of your interests, of your passions, of what brought you here in the first place. That I think is the most important thing.
So what's your favorite food?
I really enjoy Indian food, surprise. It's the food I grew up with. Our family were South Indian, and so there's a lot of spectacular South Indian cuisine that It's the kind of food that to some extent you can get at some restaurants, but so much of it, like lots of ethnic cuisines, you can't. It's the kind of thing that if you're not South Indian, you have to get invited to someone's home. And then you will know what real South Indian food is like, and it's spectacular. At least I think so. But there are lots of other, India is a very diverse country, and there's so many different ethnicities and cuisines, food cultures, if you will. And one type of food that you can find, it's really a kind of snack food. It's not the kind of thing you can eat every day, but it is spectacular if you ever discover it. It's known as chaat, C-H-A-A-T, and you should look it up, and it's amazing. And it is ridiculously tasty. It's like a party in your mouth. It's like all the good things, the sweet, the savory, the crunch. It's all good. And I love it.
If you could be anywhere on the planet right now, besides India, for a vacation, where would you go?
Outer space.
Outer space.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Dr. Vivek, for your interview. We do appreciate you, and bye-bye.
All right.